One of our clients' most favorite items of building a custom home is being able to do whatever it is that they want as far as the functionality and the design intent of their home. But one of the items that could be challenging throughout the build process is how to handle the few situations where you have to have your neighbors involved with a portion of the build process. And that would be mostly revolving around joint fences or block walls. So oftentimes we have to have a conversation with either ourselves on a spec or our client on what the intent is when it comes to the walls that surround their property. The first revolves around cost. Are we going to keep what's currently in place? And if so, how are we going to integrate that into the design of the house? The second item that we'll often discuss is what is an absolute necessity to create the privacy and the best functionality for either the backyards or the side yards. And the third item that we typically discuss is how do we get our neighbors on board? So while we're on site today, I want to cover these three topics. So the first kind of revolves around cost and what we can keep. Now, what's interesting is at the property that we're currently at, we have what would be a standard wall that was probably built, 30, 40 years ago. And this included a 4/8/16 standard block with an 8/8/16 column every 10 feet. In addition to that, it was very popular back in the day to go with a decorative cap block. And while this might not be the exact design intent that we intended for the home, we were able to design a more modern looking backyard so that when what is currently a red block fence will be painted white, it will help to create some design continuity. The second reason for keeping the block wall is sometimes it can be a difficult conversation with your neighbors who have enjoyed the current block wall in its current state for many years since they've lived in their property. So it makes for a difficult conversation to say, hey, we're going to come in and we're going to change everything up. In addition to that, many times it's almost impossible to find the exact pattern in the exact nominal size that would be required to create more privacy, in this instance by replacing the top block. It would also require, let alone finding it in the faded color that transpired over the last 50 years. This makes for a very difficult conversation and increases costs incrementally because now not only if you convince them to replace portions of the fence, it's even a more difficult conversation to try to split costs, which might not only include the replacement of the top block, but also how to create consistency, which typically entails either painting or stuccoing both sides of the fence. It's for this reason that we try to reduce the amount of changes that are required when it comes to shared fencing. So we've covered the reasons for keeping as much of the existing structure as possible. But ultimately, when you're building a new house, it creates new constraints on privacy and functionality with your given lot. And so as we sit here, we realized that there had to be a transition. There had to be a transition from the old block to a new block wall as we were able to extend our walls appropriately to the front of the house to create security and privacy for the side yards and the bedrooms and rooms associated within the house, as well as creating functional storage space such as our air conditioning condensers that will be placed on the 10-foot setback, as well as any additional exterior storage needs that you might have when it comes to landscaping tools, a small shed, any of those things that help with the functionality of the home. Herein lies the difficult conversation. As mentioned previously, today's new block standards are slightly different in sizing, as well as the capacity in which to get decorative configurations that were popularized decades ago. This is why it's imperative to meet with each of your neighbors to be able to discuss the benefits and the true value that you'd like to bring to them within the scope of your project. So in this case, we spoke with our neighbors very early on in the project. Opening up that key communication early on allows you to be able to discuss the nuances of what you'll be building in the neighborhood, but it also allows you to be able to share the design intent that will become necessary for your project to go smoothly. In speaking with our neighbors here on site, we asked quite a few questions as it related to what they would like to see. So when opening up that dialogue, we would ask pertinent questions about what they feel would be appropriately for the block work scope that has a direct effect on their property and their home. We take the time to listen for key things as it relates to shared costs, their feeling of what currently resides on the property, as well as their desire for privacy and security that would be associated to their home that we might be able to bring value to. So to wrap everything together, there's three key components that have to take place and be communicated with both parties. The first is, are they going to be okay with the material selection? In this case, a 4/8/16 standard gray fence block. So the second item would be to make sure that there's buy-in and that both parties see value in where the new fence will be placed. And the third and probably most difficult portion of conversation that needs to be had revolves around cost. Overall, will the cost be split across both parties because of the value that will be generated with this new addition to the property? Or is there an expectation that since you'll be making the change, that the cost will solely fall on your shoulders? Or is there an expectation that since this change is being requested by you or your clients, that you'll be fronting the bill for this scope of work? So sometimes it's not always an ideal situation, keep what's existing, but due to cost constraints, it's typically what happens. And so what we can do to be able to resolve some of the concerns of our clients is work with our landscape architecture team to make sure that we provide exactly what our client's looking for. And in this case, and in many cases, to create that additional privacy that most of our clients desire, given that code requires that we typically can't build a fence higher than 6 feet without special approval from the city and potentially going through more engineering, the best and easiest solution is typically for us to go ahead and plant a ficus hedge or some sort of hedge around the property that can grow to our client's desired level of privacy. We appreciate you watching to the end of this video. We hope that you find value in the content that we're creating, so please hit that subscribe button below and reach out to us if there's any questions about building a custom home with us. Have a great day.